In the gambling capital of Macau, China, a man named Lord Doyle wakes up in his luxurious suite at the Royal Hotel, and the first word that escapes his mouth is, fuck. Doyle is a gambling addict drowning in debt, owing money to nearly every casino and hotel in town. Yet, despite it all, he still clings to his delusion that he's just one game away from his big break. Just as he's getting ready for the day, a manila envelope slides under his door, probably another bill or notice of unpaid dues. Doyle ignores it and leaves the hotel and decides to try his luck in the Rainbow Casino. Before he can leave, the manager stops him. He informs Doyle that he owes 352,000 Hong Kong dollars to both the Royal Casino and the hotel for credit and unpaid food expenses. Doyle swears he'll pay everything back within 3 days, but the manager coldly warns him that if he doesn't, he'll call the police. Then Doyle walks straight into the Rainbow Casino. His game of choice, Baccarat, where fortunes are won or lost in a single hand. The rules are simple. 2 cards are dealt face down to the player with the highest wager, and whoever's hand totals closest to 9 wins. Cards 2 through 9 count as face value, while 10s and face cards count as 0. Doyle takes his seat as a waitress approaches. He orders his drink in fluent Chinese. Impressed, one of the casino employees steps forward and introduces herself as Dao Ming. Doyle introduces himself in return. Then Dao Ming asks if he's played Baccarat before. Doyle lies, claiming he's tried it 2 or 3 times. He then nods toward an older woman at the table and asks for her name. Dao Ming explains that everyone calls her Grandma, a seasoned pro at the game. She tells him that Grandma's husband is off fooling around while Grandma spends his money at the casino. A good arrangement for everyone, she jokes. Dao Ming mentions that Grandma is rumored to have the gift of seeing spirits. Doyle chuckles and replies, "Let's hope the spirits don't help her." Wearing his yellow lucky gloves, Doyle peels the sticker off his card, hoping for a win. Instead, Grandma beats his hand with a higher score. In the next few rounds, the pattern continues. Doyle loses every hand. When he finally opens his wallet to pay, it's empty. Seeing his desperation, Dao Ming offers him $20,000 in credit, her own money. Grandma warns her not to trust Doyle, saying he doesn't look like the type who repays his debts. Dao Ming ignores the warning and asks Doyle to settle the bar bill. Instead of paying, Doyle orders another bottle of champagne, excuses himself to the men's room, and runs out, escaping back to his hotel. The next day, Doyle wakes up, takes a shower, and heads downstairs for dinner. Outside, a commotion draws his attention. A man has committed suicide, jumping to his death over gambling debts owed to Dao Ming. The man's grieving wife accuses Dao Ming of preying on gamblers like a shark. Doyle steps in, trying to calm the wife, while Dao Ming flees the scene and hails a taxi. Moments later, Doyle catches up and flags down the cab for her, urging her to get in. Dao Ming reminds him he still owes $300 for the champagne. Doyle admits he has no money on him now. Dao Ming finally realizes that Doyle is completely broke. They arrive at her apartment. Doyle follows her, assuring Dao Ming that he can pay her back once he wins his next game. Confidently, he insists, "I played myself into this mess. I can play my way out." Then he tells Dao Ming that it wasn't her fault the man jumped. "Suicide," he says softly, "is a permanent solution to a temporary problem." Then he adds, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do that." Dao Ming admits that she thought Doyle was a distinguished man. She says she's never seen anyone wear gloves inside a casino before. Doyle smiles and says they bring him good luck. Dao Ming counters, "You have bad luck." Doyle brushes it off and proposes a deal. If she can lend him some money, he can make them both rich. But Dao Ming refuses and says she's done giving out credit, and that, honestly, she's given up on life. Doyle quietly admits that he's also thought about ending his life. After a pause, he guesses that the dead man owed her money, which must mean she owes money too. He encourages her not to give up, telling her there are always better ways out. She gives a bitter smile and replies, "Like lending money to another addict?" The comment hits Doyle hard. Offended, he snaps back that she has no right to judge him, not when she makes her living off illegal side bets and dodgy credit lines. He admits he's fallen low, but insists he still has a soul. "As far as I can see," he tells her, "it's no more lost than yours." Later, Dao Ming takes Doyle to the Hungry God Temple. She admits that she never should have offered him credit in the first place. Curious, Doyle asks what the man's name was. She shrugs and says, "You're all the same to me." To change the subject, she tells Doyle about the Festival of Hungry Ghosts. In a week, it will be Ghost Day, when people burn offerings to honor the dead. Then, with a wistful look, Dao Ming says, "I have to leave here." "Where to?" Doyle asks. Don't try to follow me, she replies. Doyle tells her he's going to win big. And when he does, he won't just pay off his own debts, he'll pay hers too. The next morning, Doyle wakes up to find Dao Ming gone. He looks around for her and notices numbers written on his hand. He returns to his hotel to freshen up. Later, as he steps into the elevator, a woman joins him and quickly takes a selfie, with Doyle in the background. Suspicious, he follows her as she hurries into the women's restroom to hide. He walks in casually and asks if she's a tourist. The woman says yes. Doyle asks her to delete the selfie. She smirks and asks, "Why? You on the run?" Doyle insists he just values his privacy and asks for her name. She says her name is Betty. But Doyle realizes she's not a tourist. She's a private investigator sent to track him down. When he asks what she wants, she replies simply, "Justice." Doyle threatens to call casino security and tell them she's taking photos, which is illegal unless she pays him $500. Betty smirks. "You really are down to your last penny, aren't you, Mr. Riley?" That's when it hits him. She knows his real name. Panicking, he grabs her bag and bolts. After a chase through the casino corridors, Betty finally catches up, only to realize her phone is missing. She demands it back, but Doyle tells her he'll return it for $500. Reluctantly, she pays, but he doesn't give the phone back. With that money, Doyle goes straight back to the tables. He plays baccarat, and finally wins. He tries to offer Betty a bribe of $10,000, but she refuses. He tells her he's not a criminal, but she reminds him he stole from his client and is a compulsive gambler. He insists, "I'm not a gambler." Trying to lighten the mood, he invites Betty to join him for dinner and a dance later. But Betty resists the temptation and walks away. Later, Doyle plays another round of baccarat against Grandma and loses $10,000. The next day, with only $500 left, he gambles again and loses it all. Betty shows up, snapping a picture of him at the table. This time, she sits him down and explains everything formally. She shows him paperwork from Strick and Garland Wealth Management, a UK-based firm. The company, she says, has chosen not to involve the police. Instead, they've hired Huntsworth Investigations to track him down. Riley, or Doyle, as he now calls himself, once worked as a wealth manager. Before he disappeared, he stole £900,000 from an old lady. Betty puts down her business card. Her real name is Cynthia, but we'll keep calling her Betty. She tells him she's been chasing his trail for months, but it went cold in Manila, where Doyle had apparently faked his own death, even getting a death certificate under his real name. Betty says the firm has made him an offer. Deposit the stolen money back into Strick and Garland's account within 24 hours, or be deported to the UK. Doyle glances at the numbers written on his hand, then decides to ask Dao Ming for help. He goes to her apartment and rings the bell, but no one answers. As he turns to leave, his eyes catch a postcard of Llama Island, and for some reason he decides to go there. Later, Doyle meets up with his old friend Adrian and demands the $8,000 he owes him, saying he needs to catch a boat to Llama Island in Hong Kong in 3 hours. Adrian shrugs, saying he doesn't have $8,000 but can give him 2. To lighten the mood, he buys Doyle a drink. Over their drinks, Adrian sighs and says, "You were never tough enough for this gambling game, Riley." Doyle is shocked when he realizes that Adrian was the one who snitched on him. Adrian admits it without hesitation. "Did she pay you?" Doyle asks. Adrian shakes his head. "No, Betty offered to cover my tracks in exchange for your location." Seeing the look on Doyle's face, Adrian tells him to not do anything drastic. Then he tries to lighten the tension by sharing an old myth. When a gambler dies, he wakes up in an afterlife where he wins every hand, every bet, and beautiful women surround him. Eventually, the gambler turns to the man beside him and says, "I didn't think I'd make it to heaven. I thought I was destined for the other place." And the man replies. Doyle finishes the sentence for him. This is the other place. Doyle boards a boat to Llama Island, his mind haunted by thoughts of jumping from a building, ending it all. When Doyle gets off the boat at Llama Island, he heads to a small restaurant for breakfast. After eating, he tries to sneak out without paying, but spots 2 security guards at the door. He quickly goes back to his table. The waitress approaches and asks him to settle the bill. Instead, Doyle orders another dish. She tells him that's not possible until he pays. Doyle pulls out his empty wallet, then a postcard of Llama Island. As he looks up, to his shock, Dao Ming walks in and sits beside him. They share a light-hearted conversation. She teases him for coming all the way from Macau without bringing any money. Doyle laughs and says, "It slipped my mind." Dao Ming smirks. "That's bullshit." He asks Dao Ming, "What are you doing here? What are the chances?" Dao Ming replies, "It's not chance." Suddenly, Doyle's heart starts racing. His vision blurs and everything fades. When he opens his eyes again, he's lying in bed. the smell of food heavy in the air. He heads downstairs where Dao Ming greets him gently. She tells him he'd collapsed and was admitted to the hospital for 2 days, and she brought him here afterward. Realizing he's far past his promised deadline, Doyle says he needs to go back to Macau to settle his debts. But Dao Ming insists that he should stay here. If you go back, she warns, the gambling will kill you. Later, Dao Ming takes Doyle on a boat ride across the misty bay. Doyle opens up about his family, how gambling and drinking run deep in his bloodline. She cuts the engine and lets the boat drift. Doyle asks about the numbers written on his hand. That's a test, she replies simply, then dives into the water. Doyle also jumps in after her. That night, Dao Ming asks softly, "What are you running from?" Doyle hesitates before confessing that he stole money from a wealthy old woman. Then he asks Dao Ming why she saved him. "Because you and I are the same," she replies. Then she tells him about her childhood, how, in her village, girls were considered bad luck. So when she was old enough, Dao Ming stole money from her parents and ran away to start a new life. A week later, her father died of heartbreak. She worked for years and sent money home, hoping her mother would forgive her. But her mother sent it back, untouched. Then she tells Doyle about an old Buddhist tale, the realm of hungry ghosts, a place for souls consumed by greed. They have huge mouths and thin necks, she says. No matter how much they eat or drink, they're never satisfied. Doyle asks quietly, "Is that where we are at?" Dao Ming looks at him and says, "It's not too late for you." The next morning, Doyle wakes up to an empty house. Rain pours outside as he calls out for Dao Ming, but no answer comes. He cooks breakfast for two and waits for hours, listening to the storm. Then, a loud noise comes from the nearby shack. He rushes over, finds the door locked, and notices a combination lock. He tries the numbers written on his hand. The door opens. Inside, the shack is empty except for a hatch in the floor. Doyle pulls it open and finds a rope leading down toward the water. He tugs on it, and 2 heavy bags of cash rise from below. He hesitates, torn, but greed wins. Doyle takes the money and leaves Dao Ming's house, heading straight back to Macau. There, he exchanges the cash for casino chips and returns to the baccarat table. To his surprise, he wins every game, hand after hand, unstoppable. Doyle settles his debts at the Royale Hotel and Casino, but soon begins seeing strange things, visions that make him doubt his sanity. The casino manager calls him in and says that his winning streak is not humanly possible. He explains that his staff reviewed security footage and saw a shadowy figure standing behind Doyle during every game. The manager tells him, "You've got a spirit attached to you." Doyle demands to see the video, but the manager says it's not possible and asks him not to play at their casino anymore. Frustrated, Doyle eats uncontrollably, shoving food into his mouth as his heart races faster and faster. He rushes to vomit into a bucket, but in the reflection he sees his own face twisted and ghostly. Later, he calls the manager and requests for one last game. He offers to bet 8 million Hong Kong dollars on a single hand. "If I lose," he says, "it means there are no ghosts. But if I win, I'll walk away from Macau forever." The manager agrees. When Betty hears about Doyle's massive bet, she's furious. She tells him that it's insane. Doyle begs her for one last chance, as he only has 3/4 of the money he owes to the old woman. He says, "Even though we chose different paths, you chasing the law, me running from it, somehow we both ended up here." Doyle adds that they both have the power to change their destinies. At the table, a casino employee informs Doyle that he'll be playing against Prince Lorenzo of Monte Carlo. They play several rounds, and Doyle wins every single one. His streak remains unbroken. Doyle clears his debt with the firm and slips Betty 50 grand as a personal thank you. Before walking away, he grins and says, "You should live a little." Just as he's about to leave, Betty stops him and smiles for the first time. "How about that dance?" she says. Doyle then visits the Rainbow Casino and asks Grandma where Dao Ming is. Grandma replies that she doesn't work here anymore, as she drowned herself by the temple on the first night of the Hungry Ghost Festival. Doyle says it's impossible. He was with her until morning, talking. But Grandma tells him she's dead, adding that she heard they didn't even have enough money for her cremation. The grandma then asks him to play one game with her, but he tells her no. He runs to her apartment and calls out her name. This time the door is unlocked. Inside, a pile of unopened letters sits by the door. He takes out the postcard and his mind drifts back to the restaurant when his heart started pounding, and to the time he lay motionless at the boathouse. For the first time he understands. It was Dao Ming's spirit that had been helping him all along. She had saved him from becoming a hungry ghost, consumed by his own greed and desire. Outside, The crackle of firecrackers echoes through the night. The Hungry Ghost Festival, when people make offerings to wandering spirits. He takes the money with him, then throws it into the fire, an offering for Dao Ming.